Hello, everyone. D. Alfred Ostrowski here. In this recording, I'm going to be giving a tutorial / demonstration of the compiling, minting, and deployment of your first coin using the Move programming language on the Aptos network. I'm going to be doing this demonstration as usual on Amazon EC2 instance, and I'm going to be starting from scratch. I have a couple instances already started up. If you're not familiar with that process, you might want to step through some of my earlier videos, but for brevity, I fast forwarded through that process. However, we have the fresh Ubuntu instances. I'm going to be installing it from scratch as usual. So let me just bring up I have the instance here, and I have and I'm going to need two terminals for this. So let's just start pulling in the environment again. I don't even have a project directory. I'm just using this as a sandbox, and I'm going to start pulling my commands. So I'm going to be doing a sudo apt-get update, which I just cut pasted it in from my README install file on my GitHub. This is in preparatory for the preparation for the node install and some of the other relevant node modules. As usual, I'm pulling in node 20 at this point. I'm doing a node source install, and I have the associated documentation if you want to get in the weeds on the Unix administration part of this. For brevity, I'm going to leave that out. All we want to do is make sure we have a fairly recent copy of node so we can go through this process. Bring down that node source. I'm going to set my variable to 20, and I'm going to do one additional prep command, set up some additional parameters. I'm going to do another apt-get update. It seems to help the process. And now for the install of Node.js. Now, if you ran through some earlier tutorials with Aptos, you could use the same exact configuration. They haven't changed anything. So you can fast forward about 1 minute, and that'll take you through. So I didn't put anything extra to get to this from the initial 2 Aptos videos that I made. So I got Node 20s installed. So now I can install the Aptos core or the Aptos libraries for the environment. And it's interesting to note that you can't just do a git clone. I backed everything up to my GitHub, but the Aptos libraries are too big to go to GitHub. So you're going to have to do a separate install to grab everything that you need to do to perform this. Here I installed the npm, and I'm also using the pip3 installer. Python 3 is default on Ubuntu 2020. Here I just default with continue with the yes. So I'm going to use the pip3 installer somewhat counterintuitively using Python to use a TypeScript command, but it's going to install my CLI in the same exact fashion, grab that library. So I'll do a pip3 install on the Aptos SDK. And here it's quote asking me to do a system restart. So I'm just going to default that to OK and proceed with that. So I have the Python pip3. So now I'm going to do the Aptos SDK install. And then I can git clone the Aptos core. And nearly every time I get some slight variations in the installs. Again, that's why I keep on running through this, so you can have the most current and updated copy, so you can duplicate what I'm doing, hopefully in real time. And within 20 minutes, you can go from 0 to having your working example, your first coin on Aptos. I haven't done these on SUI. SUI is a competing frame network for the Move programming language. I would assume that would be running in similar fashion. However, I have not tried it with the SUI framework. So the core is almost installed. I don't have to pause out for this. It's going to install relatively quickly. So here I'm piping through the CLI and I can test that through. I have to set up my path though. And I'm just going to fully qualify it. Okay, I can set up my environment variables. However, this is just a sandbox. I do a home Ubuntu, local bin, Aptos, and I can validate that. So I got Aptos up and running. If I just did if I didn't qualify it, then it's kind of going to complain that it's not there. Okay, so next I'm going to go to the TypeScript SDK and do a PM install on that. And for brevity, I'm cut pasting this, so you don't have to watch me making typos. Okay, so here we go with the PM install. And then next I'm going to CD down to the examples TypeScript, 2 further directories. So it did some further installs here. And interestingly, I get a node modules here when I run the actual starting command for the your coin example. So I'm going to do an npm install. If you see that you're getting a node modules error, then obviously going to have to make sure that you're including this command in here. And for that reason, exactly is why I'm documenting this well, so you can duplicate exactly the process that I went through. Because as you well know, if you've been in the business, okay, none of this runs byte for byte exactly as advertised. There's always some slight variation with your own architecture. And again, this may not be your preferred architecture, but at least I can give an example to you and you can get it to run and then take it anywhere you like, right, as usual. So now let's start up the your coin example. So we haven't even looked at the code yet. Let's just get it to run. It's pretty simplified. So we can run it and then break it down once it's done its job and we could validate it. So we generated 2 EC2 addresses have been generated, and it says update the module with the Alice's address, compile and press enter. So at this point, I have to transition. The code is waiting for me, so I'm going to have to go to my other screen, bring that up in the inset here, and I'm going to do the compile of the second library here. So let me move forward here, and I have to do this out of the right directory because I brought up that terminal. It's just in home Ubuntu, and I didn't make a project directory, so I can do a CD to the Aptos core. I have to pull out my vernacular here and actually do that as it's supposed to describe it. And I'm going to do a move compile, and to do that, I'm going to have to stage that command because the command as presented has just an arbitrary address, and I have to replace that, okay, with the Alice's address. They give us an old address here because you're generating it every single time, right? So in this case, I'm going to take the first address that's generated here, and I can assign that to Mooncoin. And this is right out of the developer's tutorial. And now I can do an Aptos move compile. Of course, I have to make sure that that's completely qualified. So I'm going to pull in my home Ubuntu local bin before Aptos, so it's recognized, right? So I can do all this from the command line. If I'm doing my own move modules, I can do a compile and then publish. But here I'm doing the compile command line, and then I'm initiating the publish right here from the TypeScript. So I'm jumping ahead and doing the compile independently, right? So let's do a home Ubuntu. Local bin, and now I'm going to have it recognized. So now we're going through the compile process, and it's going to generate a transaction hash. And once it's all said and done, we can go to the Explorer or the DevNet for Aptos, and we can validate our transaction. But first we have to complete it. Here we just did a compile, and it didn't really send it out to the network yet. However, we have a transaction hash that we can work with when we're looking it up. So here we're doing the publication. So now it's sending it to DevNet. which is defaulted in the definition in the IP is actually in the Aptos core. And it grabs the resources, it touches the faucet, the account allocation. So this is really convenient, right? Compared to, let's say, Ethereum, where I have to go to faucet, beg for resources, which is can be somewhat extraneous, right? So here I did an update with the publication. I have initial balance on Bob's account. Alice minted some of the coin and she transferred the coin to Bob. And then we check the balance again. So we'll break down the source, but first things, let's just validate that on the Explorer. So this is very nice to have that confidence to say, does this actually work as appropriate? And I have this in the associated documentation. I want to make sure that I'm doing the search on transactions. So I'm just going to click on transaction, user transactions here, and then I can go back to full screen. And it validated that transaction hash, right? When I got in the drop down, but you want to make sure that you're searching on transactions, or if you're looking up accounts and you look up accounts. But here I had to transfer coins that was initiated, and it was updated through to the blockchain, okay, on the development network. An X5642 going to 5C58. So let's make sure that we're talking about 5642 and 5C58. So there you go. So we validated this on the DevNet for Aptos network through their Explorer. And so let's break this down a little bit and look at the actual script and examine, now that we got it up and running, let's see exactly what happened and get a little bit deeper understanding. So in this example, we have a number of libraries that are being brought in. Okay, pretty standard. It's interesting to note the node and the faucet. Okay, these URLs are baked into the Aptos core, so I don't have to worry about reaching out to the DevNet. That's pretty much set up as the default in this TypeScript-based example. So in the import, bring in the relevant libraries. And then we have some modules that are going to be relied upon here. I have a setup with the read line, okay, and this is configuring my standard in and out. Pretty standard stuff. I got a constructor here with the node URL, and then I have a number of utility functions. First, to do a registration on the coin, and they all follow the same consistency, doing a generate. And we're going to dig a little bit deeper into these in some further content. I have a generate transaction, sign and submit transaction, and returning the pending. And this is all set up as async, obviously. Similar for the transfer coin, I do a generate on the transaction and referencing the appropriate definition for what we're defining as a moon coin, and doing a sign and submit and look up the pending transaction. Also for the mint coin, we're generating the associated transaction, and we have a managed coin mint, and we're pretty much doing a default operation on the coin, not too much customization here, right? And then we have a get balance function. Here we check the account resource and return the amount. So let's look at the main function that are invoking this. We pull in the appropriate accounts, print that out. That's what we saw when we first initiated the first pass on the TypeScript. We funded the accounts to the separate addresses. Super convenient here. We just pass in the money. We don't have to worry about generating it from a faucet or going through any of the mechanisms that we might have to do on other networks. And then the prompt here that sat there and waited for us. Okay, update the module with the Alice's address. That's when we jumped back to the compile and we took Alice's address and put that in the module. So Alice's account initiated that coin generation, right? And now we're doing the actual publication with the client published package, wait for the transaction, and we check the balances and we print that out of the console. Alice mints the new coin, and we have the associated balance for the transactions. And then we do a transfer coin and wait for that transaction to give the associated balances. And there you have it. So next, now let's look very briefly at the actual move code. Actually, the first time these Aptos demonstrations. So I'm under the moon coin here, and you have a move toml file, and we have to drill down to the sources to actually see our actual move code that's being relied upon here. And we're not doing a lot here. It's just a configuration of a generic coin generation for a managed coin, and we're calling it Mooncoin, and we're invoking init module. So init module runs on just invoked on a publication. I don't have to specifically do a typical, in most cases with move module, which we'll look at in the future. I have to do a specific run command here. I'm just going to do a publication. I'll take that init and just run it kind of like a constructor module, right? It's just going to pass in whatever code that I set to initialize this. In this case, I'm defining this coin with the associated information. So there you have it. We're able to create our entire environment and do a compile, publish, and transfer of our first coin on Aptos framework using the Move programming language implemented via TypeScript, which is again the preferred language for the client side. So again, all the resources are on my GitHub. Thanks for listening. Hope this helps. Take care. See you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.